Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Tomás Ferreira, Miguel Aido,
Hello.
and Leonardo Miranda.
It's a beautiful rainy day.
Beautiful rainy day with
Preach it.
storms on the way. As part of our award season segment, we'll be looking at the likely contenders for the 2025 Oscars. Today we talk about The Brutalist, but before any ado, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. The Brutalist is a 2024 epic period drama directed and produced by Brady Corbett, who co-wrote the screenplay with Mona Fastvold. It stars Adrian Brody as a Hungarian Jewish Holocaust survivor who immigrates to the US, where he struggles to achieve the American dream until a wealthy client changes his life. The Brutalist premiered at the Venice International Film Festival in September, where Corbett was awarded the Silver Lion for Best Directing. The film received great critical acclaim for its direction, screenplay, performances, cinematography, and score, earning 10 nominations at the Academy Awards. Very well, the RWC boys seem to be facing a behemoth like no other in recent movie memory, but were they really impressed with the canopy of beautiful vistas and intellectually stimulating tittle-tattles, chitter-chatters of Mr. Guy Pearce and Adrian Brody? Well, fellas, get that pickaxe and start sizzling. Let's dive in, shall we?
It's chiseling, though.
Chiseling.
Repeat.
Chiseling.
What
It was a while
did you
ago I
guys
saw this
think?
film.
It was a while ago. Yeah, it's been
It
a
was a
while.
good while
I
ago.
watched it yesterday.
Okay,
Oh
so
yeah?
it's
Oh,
fresh.
then you have the fresh memory on it. How about kickstarting the ball?
It's an impressive film, I think. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
well, first of all, I was surprised that the film has an intermission, which was interesting because for such a long
Oh,
film,
I knew
was
about
kind
that.
of,
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping, can I leave for a while just to take a breath? And actually, it does seem like two separate, smaller films when you have the intermission, so for me, it was a very easy watch. I didn't really feel the time. But yeah, it's a pretty solid film, I think. I don't know, I have some issues with some scenes, some pacing, but I think it comes from the script. Some things that I didn't fully get with the characters, and a bit their motivations in certain scenes. Things here and there, not really all that relevant, didn't really hinder my experience. Yeah, overall, I mean, I was really impressed. I think the cinematography is beautiful. The music is amazing. The acting as well. So, yeah, I mean, my first impressions are pretty positive, I think.
For sure, mostly positive. And it's that thing. It's like a movie feels like an event to go to. Like it's such a long
Yes.
film with
At the very least, we have that. It's an event. When you don't have anything else going on in these nominations, this is a solid film for that.
yeah, exactly. It's the closest we have to Oppenheimer and Barbie from last year in terms of just spectacle, let's say.
And it makes you actually eager to go see it as
Yeah,
well.
I was really looking forward to the experience, to being there with the big screen, the film,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
Vista
with
Vision.
the with the overture, the epilogue, the intermission. It's very structured, and yeah, I didn't feel the time that much. I mean, at the intermission, I had to get up and get some popcorn because I was really hungry, and it's not really a popcorn film, especially not in the second half. But yeah. But I liked the film. I don't love it. I think it's a solid film.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll talk more about the shortcomings. I talked a lot with Tomás over messages a few days after watching it, so I think those things will come back to me. But yeah, it's a bit fuzzier now, a couple weeks later.
But yeah, I'm like you guys. I think it's a solid film, mainly for the main performances. I really like Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce, and Felicity Jones as well has actors as thespians. They really bring their A game to it, and and particularly for the character of Lazlo, he's a very mesmerizing character in the circumstances that he finds himself in, being this Hungarian Jewish architecture who really brings his art to the foreground of the movie as part of what are his core beliefs about himself, what makes his passion, what makes his life, and he brings that to America, a whole country who does not has the same views as he has about architecture. He imports this style very much influenced by the happenings of the time in Europe with the war to a country that has not assimilated this. So it's very much a movie to do with the story of the immigrant and what that life and influences brings to a country that does not have that same baggage, and what is that cultural clash. and identity clash that derives from it, so to speak. And those are very, of course, always timeless ideas and very interesting in this film. Him as a character, particularly in the first half, I think is very well constructed. His relationship with Guy Pearce as it happens is very interesting. The music is beautiful in its experimentation. I love that it's a combination of jazz with also blending natural sounds of the honking of the boat arriving at New York with the Statue of Liberty. Is very evocative, so to speak, of the voyage of the immigrant, you know, brings back Charlie Chaplin in The Immigrant. And I think, you know, the very opening, one of the very opening images that I remember is on the deck of the boat, going over this line of people trying to get at the top, trying to see light, and we are with him. It's a very subjective point of view shot, although it's not even a subjective point of view, it's just over the shoulder, but it's handheld. It's a very tight shot, and we are going through him, through this crowd of people, and you're really feeling you are in the bellows of the beast, you know, and you haven't seen the light for a very long time. And it's very disorienting at the same time, because, you know, it's always kept within over the shoulder. Sometimes we may lose his presence on the shot to see other things, you know, as we shift between subjective point of view and objective point of view, and then eventually come out when you see the Statue of Liberty in a kind of this reverse position up in the air from a low angle position, and then on the side. So it's a, you know, it distorts the physical the laws of physics, so to speak, which is interesting. It's reverse, and then finally the Statue of Liberty as we see it, not upside down, but you know, just normal, standing up. And so it's the American dream in all its forms, you know, perfect and imperfect. And of course, you know, the first half, you know, he's received by his cousin Attila, so you know, everything is kind of like going steadily for him, more or less. And you see although of course with its hardships, he's not the architect, well-respected architect as he's supposed to be, as in back home. He's forced to take up jobs that he doesn't want to do. But he is able to find some financial stability, a place to stay, so to speak, and it's with family. So those are good things, positives. And progressively, you see how his art is harbored is given shelter by his cousin. And then there's an elegance to all of this, and him refining his culture again, you know, the embrace of the cousin, the embrace of his religion when he goes to the synagogue. Okay, so it's interesting to kind of see the culture of this man. And then progressively, there's this fascinating opportunity to build a library for the Van Burens through his son, the son of Guy Pearce, who is Harry. And there we know that goes off not the right way, because Harry's son Van Buren, played by Guy Pearce, comes in and is distraught by it. He brings his sickly mother to his home, finds a library being destroyed, his library, and, you know, shoos the man out, doesn't even pay him, or rather, his son doesn't pay Adrian Brody. We know that then, you know, he finds out that Adrian Brody is this huge architect, pays respects to him, invites him back to property, and the main mission of the film, the main goal is, of course, make him construct this community center, which is a chapel and a theater and a gymnasium, a bunch of things, right? And so, all in all, interesting. You know, we know that from this fall of having been, you know, put out of his house and because and not being paid, we know that Attila expels him. So there's this interesting dialogue between him and his cousin, in which his cousin is more integrated in the American culture. He isn't. He's more blunt. You know, he comes from a different culture. Those hardships are interesting, and what comes out of that is that for the longest time he turns to heroin addiction. So that's interesting to mix with the character. How can someone be so high and mighty, so well respected in the art community of Hungary, but at the same time go to heroin to cope with this other life that he gets on in America, has essentially most of the times a beggar or with low working class jobs, which is not what he wants to do. And then he's, you know, sheltered by Van Buren again. He's given this mission to do. You feel well for the character. You want to see what he can come up with, you know, and you identify with, because you know, he's an architect, but it also speaks to every one of us as an artist, where you are a painter, a filmmaker. You are constructing this for the producer, someone, right, who brings in other elements onto the fold of the team who do not agree with what you're doing, and then you have to collaborate with that. And I was watching this film with my father, who works in engineering, so I was always thinking, what is my my dad thinking, who works with guys like architects, and he's aware of like this sort of world. And in the intermission we were talking about stuff, and I'm going to recommend this to my colleagues because this is my favorite film of the year. And then his opinion changed a little bit in the second half, although he liked it very much still, and he was still recommended. But it was interesting to see. I was asking him, so what do you think when he was talking about concrete there? And so I was just talking with him about that kind of stuff. I really like architecture as well. I don't know if I borrowed that a little bit from my dad, but what happens then afterwards in the second half for me is that all these pressures are built in the first half, where you have sort of the architect, Adrian Brody, Lazlo Toth, in this estate, building this community center for this big wealthy dude, Van Buren. And in the meantime, his niece, his wife, who have been away for the greater part of the first half of the film in Europe because she's sick, she finally eventually can get out of the camp and get to the other side to America. They go to him, they get reinstated in the estate, they even find a job for her, she's a journalist. But what happens in the second half for me is that like you have these mounting pressures that then are kind of not used or not developed in the second half as much, which kind of deteriorate the film a little bit for me. I think it's overall a solid film. I like the performances, I like the character, I like his voyage, I understand it, but the second half takes a lot of juice, of tension from the film. I think his self-indulgence, and the word I use, self-indulgence, pretentiousness that he has of going to all sorts of places, of locations, I think he gets so ambitious that he disperses his vision a lot in the second half of the movie. And as well, the tension of the film. And by the end of the film, I was just like, come on, film, end, finish. Like I was just, for the most part, like the 2/3 of the movie, I was like, it's going well, like you said. But then I was like, oh, okay, come on. You're being so self-indulgent with this. You have lost your north, I think, because for me it was essentially Lazlo Toth gets dismissed from his job at the community center of building that great work of art that he's trying to do, which really starts as just an objective thing, him in relationship with his community center. And then he goes off to New York, he finds some other stability there, working at an architectural firm, doing drafts of buildings. He has an apartment, he has left the Van Burens on the other side of the country. And Zsófia now talks, his niece and etc., and they're speaking of leaving the country. But the thing is, he has now found stability in another place, in New York, at this other firm, and then Van Buren comes along and he asks him to get back. And I really think, like, why are you getting back to this guy when you have found stability in New York? The film tries to argue that he has this emotional connection to the community center, that it's going to be his great creme de la creme masterpiece. But the thing is, I never felt that the community center was really a job that he had an emotional binding to it, that he felt like this is going to be my utmost masterpiece. It felt in the beginning, the first half, as I'm happy for it. It's great that I'm having a channel to express myself, but I agree that at that level, that's great. But I get that feeling. That same feeling is the feeling I get when he gets to make chairs for his cousin. I get to employ my art to make this sort of minimalist chair for this little furniture place. But where is like the dedication, the need to express my experiences in a work onto this? We get that at the ending when there's this big speech at the, Biennale in Venice, but that's too late. I never had that feeling of this being, I need to build this. This is my utmost match. This is the thing I need. This dedication, this investment was not there in the beginning towards this community.
Yeah, I agree with that general sentiment that
right.
Overall I totally agree. Like his passion for the project is kind of lost most of the time. It just feels like, as you're saying, he's doing a job. But there are moments like for when he gives up his salary or whatever, like gives up part of his salary.
I can agree with that, of course, yes.
To fulfill his vision of what it should be, that you understand, okay, he has a passion for this beyond just the financial. It's an artistic one.
Of course.
But most of the rest, I mean, I didn't really... It's that thing when they're explaining it at the end, at the Biennale, I was thinking, I feel like we should have seen a bit of this, like, drive towards reflecting his trauma in the art, in the rest of the film. Not just explained to us at the end. There. And even though I think the end is, there's sort of an, ironic side to it. It's, suddenly this thing becomes a commodity. It's like his horrible experiences become
Yeah,
something to, these arts pretentious people to feel good about, to share and to say, and to give honors to. It becomes like a performance and not so much about the art itself and the trauma that he went through. So that's interesting, but still, I would like to have seen him go through that. The relation
that
between the
struggle.
art and the trauma throughout the film
Yes,
feels too separated, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think those elements that then come back in the epilogue at the end, you can see them throughout the film. He's care for certain details which we don't really know the significance of, and then we can understand how it's the exact measures of this cell or it's the exact thing that he used, whatever. Yeah, I mean, we can connect the dots and we can then retrospectively, I suppose, see the film a bit differently. But I agree when we're watching, it's not a full disconnect, but we do sense that we don't fully understand why this is coming at this level of intensity or lack of. I mean, I wasn't entirely like bothered by it. I think, as you said, with the salary, I mean, there are still elements that we can see that mean that he really cared for this project.
I think also something, maybe, what you're saying is true. I also felt is that when he first builds the library for Van Buren, I felt like in that moment it communicated a lot better, like his passion for this thing, like the way he's calculating the light and putting the blinds and all the
the way
building
he
of that
respects the
library.
books as well,
Yeah,
which
exactly. All
belong to
that.
him. There's a respect for the space.
Yeah, it felt a
There's a
lot more
dialogue with
like
the
we were
space.
exploring, yeah, his
Yes,
love for the art form that he
yes.
so loves. Whereas
Which
the
there's
rest
not
of the
so much
film,
in the
not so
building.
much. Yeah,
The building
exactly.
it remains for a very long time an abstract idea
But that's
that is
that's exactly the
just.
reason, I think,
Mm,
because the library, you see it built, and so there's just automatically a sense of achievement, and I think those feelings come with it. Whereas the construction of the community center takes so long, and you always see it in construction that you never really see that sense of achievement and that sense of, yeah, so I've done this, I've achieved this whole thing. And whereas in the construction, you always see a working man. It's not really an architect, but rather someone that belongs in this crew of people that is on this project for many years. So it's these two sides which I think come from Lazlo, which are different. And in the library, I think it's much easier to see the architect and the artist because it's something much more contained and easy to see the full picture, and then the people contemplating it. So the whole process happens in the film in not a lot of time, whereas the construction is something that takes up a lot of time, and it's not even built when we get to the end. Only through the epilogue do we see the whole thing. So I think that's part of the reason why. Not sure how we got here, but
well, we were discussing how well expressed is this relationship of his past trauma with the war, and his
right.
emotional investment in the building is in the film like evident, like and evident does not mean to
Yeah.
say obvious, but just expressed. I don't think there's that dialogue.
I think that it happens in a lot of different ways through the dialogues with his wife and the hints of sort of religious discrimination, xenophobia. But I think it's not often connected with the art. So I think that we agree because those issues, in fact, is what is driving him to construct the thing in this way. And so, even though we see these themes and these traumas in other ways through his wife, but I think with the art form itself, with the construction of the community center, it often feels like a job, like a task,
yeah,
and
exactly. It often feels like a job. Yeah.
it there's a certain disconnect with the actual themes, which would be have been interesting. And of
Yes.
course,
Yes.
again, in hindsight, we can see how these things were mattering a lot because there were important details from his past life. But when we're actually seeing it, I mean, they're just sort of trivial things which we don't really understand, or we can try to understand, but it's not totally clear.
Hmm. And then there's the matter of another thing in the voyage from the first half to the second half for me, is that I referred, the matter of the tension is withheld, but then gets lost. It dissipates in the second half. Much to do with that, it's not just that we lose track of his emotional investment in the building, but the idea that we lose track of his emotional investment in the building, his dedication to this building as his masterpiece that is so lauded by the end as such, is not only to the fact that that emotional investment is not very well worked out in terms of art, of artist and object. It's not very well, evident or put into foreground in the movie. It's also because he leaves the place. He leaves the place and goes to New York and finds new stability there. And that's a problem for me, because the thing is, if the movie really works good ideas and settles good seeds for the rest of the story to grow into tension, be developed being that tension in the first half, when his wife arrives there and Zsófia is there, because certain things start happening. There's this communal experience of two different families from two different social classes. Perhaps they wouldn't be very different with Lazlo from if he was back in Hungary in his high and mighty position, but in this place, as he is in America, he is in a different place socially to the Van Burens. And the fact of the matter is, you see how the Van Buren cherish the thoughts and Lazlo, his work, who he is intellectually, and respect him. All the while, they use him and they tolerate him, as Harry seems to put it. So there is venom there. And so if the film had continued with the thoughts remaining at his state for the rest of the duration of the film, that would have been more interesting to me than to make them go away, because you have a mounting pressures of these two different families together, both alike, respecting each other, but also the tension of this underlying disrespect of them being immigrants, of them being not from here. We only tolerate you. And the thing is, you have bubbling problems like the heroin addiction, which could be a problem down the line, but that never becomes something that he often becomes very close to, being discovered as that addict. He wakes up late in the morning, he goes up late to the project, and yet he needs to be fit and able to present what the project is to financiers and people who are interested. The community itself, at Doyletown, I think that's the name of the town. But he never really is unveiled as an addict. We come close to risk, but it never becomes a problem. That seems like something that could constitute like a problem or an obstacle down the line. Being in, this, very well-respected architect, suddenly people seeing this dark side to him. It's never really something that bubbles up and explodes in that tension. And then there's also the fact.
But it has significance.
It does have significance, of course, but it's not used in that way, which you create this expectation in the viewer that could be very well, it's just there, ready for the picking, and it's not used in that way, and it feels like a missed opportunity for the tension.
It ends up having importance narrative.
That's another story. It of course it has importance narratively, yes, but it doesn't. It's not used in this way. In my hypothesized vision of the film, where at its best he would have stayed in the estate, and the problem of the heroin would bubble up in such a way that it would be uncovered and not turn out good for him. The other thing is, so that would be one amounting pressure of them remaining at the property. The longer they stay here, the more the Van Burens are going to unveil about him. Yeah.
Artists being drug addicts is it's not that surprising or even uncommon.
It's not. Yeah,
especially in the 50s, heroin was different back then too.
Well, I don't know, because the fact of the matter is that they do care enough to do it in behind closed doors and to not be seen.
Yeah, no,
so
of course.
What you say may be right.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in terms of it being a big problem, I don't know if it would even be. It's okay, he's an artist who does drugs. It's not. It
would be a problem, at least to the extent that you can make it a problem. You can make it a problem if you want to make it a problem.
Yeah,
in my understanding of it, as a problem is
that interesting, to make it a big problem. I think it's more about how it affects him and his creation of art, and how it would be an obstacle in that sense, but in terms of
exactly, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. What if it starts hampering him? What if he, turns up late, and they start asking questions? That's what I mean.
But wouldn't that be too many issues for the character and
Depends how you play it in terms of intensity. Like what I'm like as I am describing it, it seems like it would be like the main point of the movie, and I wouldn't want it to be the main point of the movie or anything. I don't, because then it would be about the heroine, and it's not about that. It's just an obstacle. It's a hindrance. The movie plays it as a hindrance. At some point it does use it. So it just would be natural to go that way.
I mean, in the show, it's a hindrance in some ways that is sort of he arrives late and he's not showered.
But then it really doesn't constitute a hindrance. He arrives late, but he is successful in doing what he needs to do. So it's like it's there, but it's not there.
But it's not supposed to be a main problem anyway. I mean, it has the importance that it has. As a secondary thing, it has secondary importance.
But the question I ask, what importance? He uses it to cope. And that's just it. Never constitutes a problem. It never.
No, he started because of his injury. Because of his injury.
I know, but I would like to see that. How does this turn into something bad? How does this sour?
But it doesn't need
is what's bad. Like the fact that he's addicted to something is what's bad itself. It's not.
Yeah, but I don't see that affecting his work.
I think that's too like that would be a little too narratively a little too much like. I don't know, he's already gone through so much trauma, already so much misery.
No, but
then you add on like having to be confronted about his heroin addiction or things like that. I think
precisely the thing that is helping him cope is the thing that sours things further. That's what's interesting. The thing that he's using to,
But he's only coping with a physical nose pain. I mean, it's not like it started, for some psychological.
He clearly is getting addicted to it more than just the nose pain.
Yes, but it didn't start like as a way to cope with the trauma of the war. I mean, it started in a sort of
no, I never said
innocent. No, but in being so innocent, the matter that it started, it kind of points to the fact that he probably doesn't have the personality to become like a super addict, and that he completely hinders his work. I mean.
I think he becomes a super addict.
I don't think he becomes a super addict.
No, he doesn't become a super addict.
Wait, Gordon, his friend, has passed the time of using the product, heroin, and when he doesn't have it anymore, he says, "Do you have the thing? Do you have the thing? No, I don't have the thing anymore. I've give up on it." So he clearly, needs it more than Gordon needs it.
I don't remember. I think that scene comes at a point where he's like, there's some problem going on, and it's like again to cope.
Yeah, he's struggling with the trauma of the rape.
Exactly. It's like that's the main point there. It's the rape. I just using it to numb the pain of being sexually assaulted.
The heroin addiction became so very present to me more than once, coming back to us, but never constituting the obstacle that the film wanted to be up until the heroin overdose of the wife. But I just think that if they had stayed in the property, the heroin addiction could grow into not a larger but a medium level problem that could hamper his connection to his work, to the building. Let's say if he sat in the property and we developed further his emotional connection to this building, to the masterpiece, we made it more evident how much investment he puts in this building, then we could put into dialogue what the heroin helps or doesn't help with that, And we could play with that problem to various degrees, I'm not saying that the heroin could be such a problem that would become like a major conflict in his life. I don't want that because I don't think the film is about that. But it just seems like a missed opportunity to me to not, at the very least, show how it hampers.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think there's like a bigger problem that we already talked about, which is you already don't feel that much of his connection between the trauma and his art. So then the fact of the heroin coming in between that doesn't even come into my thinking of that would be a great narrative device to use, because there's already a failure before, which is I don't feel that much of a connection between him and the art form.
I am advocating for like this imaginary, hypothesized line of narrative where we would be fixing that first problem, and to help it further, the heroine would be in dialogue with his relationship with his building and what is going on. Is it hampering? Is it helping him? What are his visions of the building? But then there's the fact, also another pressure point that is not developed further, is the fact that Harry is suggested that he assaults Zsófia, his niece. And it's a crucial scene that is very like overlooked, and you don't see anything. And the fact that you don't see anything, produces a mystery in the film about what happened. That, oh my God, what happened? It creates that question in the viewer, which is like, dispatched,
Yeah,
and
it's
we don't care
completely
anymore. And the
exactly.
thing, if they had stayed in the property and dealing with these problems that are hidden under the sheets, of their, living together, these two families, the Toths and the Van Burens, that problem with Zsófia, Harry and Zsófia, would have been developed further, but it isn't. And then next scene, they're in New York, and you see Zsófia at their home finally speaking, and with this husband that we never seen before, she gets married, we completely overlooked her life, what happened. Now she speaks, now she has a husband, and she's deciding to go to Israel, which is then another idea that is interesting, because Zsófia decides to go to Israel, the diaspora, the promised land for us Jewish people. And then later on, you have Erzsebét also wanting to go to Israel and leaving, let's leave America. Well, all this need to go to Israel from behalf of Zsófia, from behalf of Erzsebét, and eventually on behalf of Lazlo Toth, who becomes guilty for having his wife, having overdose, and then he says at the hospital, yes, let's go to Israel. Well, all this decision, all this heartbreak, all this need to find the promised land that finally welcomes them would have felt even more earned if they had stayed at the property, developing the building, and we saw that this bubbling relationship between Harry and Zsófia gone wrong, and what toxic feelings is that producing in Zsófia. And so then she wants to flee to Israel. Then Erzsebét wants to flee to Israel. Then Zsófia finds another outlet, this other husband. All these things would have felt better. Instead, there's this cut where the tension disappears. They go away to New York. He finds his stability. And then he gets very, very much dispersed. I think the tension could have been better worked at if they had remained there with the project. He's bound to the project. With Van Buren, he's bound to this odd character, flamboyant guy, wealthy dude. And yet the tension disappears. And then they go to Italy to find the marble. And because the tension disappears, it's so odd when the Van Buren comes back into his life. He says, yeah, sure, let's make the building again. A building which in the first place felt very much like a job and not an intense piece of art. Although I can understand his need for expression through the building. It's not that very much intense, the relationship with the building anyway. They go to this beautiful quarry, which, in 300 years, that's the quarry that has been used to produce, the marble that Michelangelo used to sculpt his sculptures. It goes back to the Renaissance years. In 304 years' time, there's going to be no marble in that quarry, as far as I know, as Brady Corbett has described it. And it was put on film. So that's a beautiful vista right over there. But then, yada, 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 go back to the story, you see the Van Buren kind of seeing him dancing inside the quarry, and it just seems so self-indulgent, and then eventually he's like, I'm gonna fuck this guy. Okay, so we produce this rape scene, which is quite a shock in the theater, but it seems like it's just shock value. It's not riddled with the weight of him having living together for years and years, building that thing together. You see, in that estate, they have gone away. The tension has disappeared, then they reunite and hear quarry and he decides to rape him, and I'm like smirking at it,
I was a bit like, come on.
I'm shocked, but I'm, at the same time I'm like, this doesn't really hold. I mean, movie, where are you going now? Where are you going?
Yeah, it's because of what you're saying. The tension has been dissipated. So when he's saying because he's talking through it and he's saying things that we know he would be feeling if they had stayed together for all this time, but because it's been how from New York, from after the project ends to New York, how long is it? It's a while. It's not a couple days. It's a few. It's a long time, years, right? Few years. It's the things he's saying. I mean, he's like, "Oh, pretty. You think you're a pretty boy. You think you're better than me," and things like that. It feels like those things would have dissipated from the perspective of the Van Buren, and you wouldn't have this disdain for this guy anymore, for being envious of his, artistic drive, which is also one of the main things that I think he feels towards him, is this disdain that he's able to be an artist and to have this artistic expression, whereas Van Buren is just, just a money guy, very intellectually stimulating, but he's a fucking idiot, so I think that's part of the intention there. But because it's been years, it's why are you doing this? It's a very harsh action, very horrible thing, and it feels completely forced by the screenwriter. Yeah, but it really indicates that the film really wants that bubble up of
of tensions, really is seeking it, and he could have done that if they had remained in the property, developing that project together. Because then the ingredients are correct. The rape scene could still happen. The other moments could still happen, but they are just not arranged in the disposition that makes them work.
I think that,
Mike, go ahead. Yes.
no, I mean, I think they were going for different intentions because in getting him to leave the estate, I mean, the idea is, of course, okay, he's so passionate about the project that he needs to come back. And I guess the tension is with his wife because then she has to stay in New York. And I mean, clearly they were going for this level of tension, um, which I don't mind. I think it would have been interesting to see as well. I just don't think, yeah, it fully works. But I don't think the film is completely devoid of it. I just think that the ones that they chose, so to speak, are not fully worked on correctly, I suppose. Because yeah, the tensions that because I mean when the whole thing with him, leaving the estate and then coming back creates some sort of tension with his wife. Um, I just don't think that is fully developed because then you also feel like the wife doesn't really mind the whole thing anyway. So yeah, it ends up being more connected with his niece leaving, which is a completely different thing and kind of unrelated to the project being concluded.
Anise, that is actually the opening shot in the movie, her face, being interrogated. But then there's no relationship with her whatsoever. It's very meek, and she goes away right at the
I
beginning
mean, and
of
she's
the
the end
second
of
half of the movie.
and she's
And
also
she's the end of the
end.
movie.
But
And I'm
why?
like, who is this character? Who's this character?
And even if we consider the whole sort of subdued, veiled discrimination of Van Buren with regards to his being Jewish. I mean, even that it's kind of sort of very flimsy in the way that
It's very
it's built.
flimsy and very
I mean,
fleeting. Flimsy
I
and
think I
fleeting.
think one moment is like he throws a penny at him, which is like he goes from doing sort of really nothing against him to suddenly throwing a penny, which is really insulting. So like, is there anything else in between? Like, how can you just?
There seems to be some inconsistency, which is interesting. Like he can have these bursts of being insulting, which are then very easily forgotten, or it's just like these bursts and then away with them. I don't know. I felt like to the question of he's clearly racist and elitist, but sometimes like that moment, it's weird, that scene, isn't it? It happens and then very very easily ends.
But to
And
be honest, I didn't. I mean, I felt that it was elitist, sure, but it didn't really come across as a bad person at heart. I mean, at least not until eventually, the rape scene.
Yeah.
But I mean, generally speaking, he doesn't really come across as someone that is in to get him. I
yeah,
mean, just
for the longest part, he doesn't really seem that bad, you
It just
know.
seems
yeah. I
kind
mean,
of distrustful. Just seems someone that I can't really trust. But I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like maybe he's nice, I guess.
I
Like,
mean, when he has that conversation with him at the diner, when he comes back to him and he apologizes for the library, the way he argues, you kind of forgive him as a character. Okay, I can understand that, In the moment when the outburst happens, you're like, horrible, dude. When he comes back and apologizes, and my mother was dying, okay, I understand. And then he kind of cures your belief in the character. And for the longest time, until the rape, it's kind of, despite the moment of the coin, he's largely a kind dude. Harry is the asshole.
yeah, Harry
His
seems
son.
like the worst.
in a sense, it's like they overplayed him in the library scene, like so that later on in the film they could have something to fall on when trying to justify him as being this racist, misogynistic guy who was like that all along. Because if you think about it, he's never like that again after that library scene, that outburst of rage and racism. And so it's almost like, okay, let's just make sure we see him like this once, so that we can have some sort of justification afterwards.
And
It just
also another thing. Yeah,
it
yeah.
seems
Go ahead. Go
inconsistent.
ahead.
No, it just seems a bit inconsistent in terms of.
Yeah. And regarding his love for the character of Adrian Brody, there seems to be this kind of sexual allure, of course, because of the rape scene. Again, if they had remained at the estate, it would be interesting to develop that and kind of see the little glimpses which could have stayed ambiguous, of that love or that fascination. If the two had remained at this end, and then burst into that explosion of a scene that is the rape scene. Guy Pearce is a very interesting actor, you know, just to comment him as a character, because I think when he plays bad guys, he always has the same voice. He's the same thing when he plays Wayland for the Prometheus movie, and he does always the same husky, throaty kind of voice, like, my friends, let's look into the future and imagine what we can do with all this concrete. It will be amazing. And I swear to God, like the way that the scene in which they are talking in this big salon, and it's this party commemorating kind of Lazlo Toth. He invites all his architectural friends, and it's the first time that he comes back after the library incident, and he welcomes him, and after that dinner he presents him his new job, which is a community center. You have this very conventional scene, filmed it shot reverse shot, where you have Van Buren talking with Lazlo, and they are sharing passions. One, you see kind of the background of Van Buren. He's talking about his grandparents stealing money from his mother, the importance of his mother in his life, and the scene goes for so long about him telling that story that is so funny. Like the director didn't even bother to kind of just add some variety or suggest, push Guy Pearce into subtle different directions of behavior, because I see the blocking and he's repeating his movements. His
you mean the glass?
On and off. The glass. I mean, I was laughing myself because it's like, he's like this. And then he puts the glass down on the table and he goes back, well, and then this happened and whatnot. Cuts back to Lazlo, cuts back to him. He's going back, blah, 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 and then cuts back to him, and then putting the glass back down on the table. And then, of course, he goes back, and then I went to my parents' house and, and goes
give him
back,
a cigar.
And give him, it's just different, it's so funny that it's always the same movement, and it's a little bit, it's small thing, but directing wise, I think he could have pushed to, hey, do you want to try a different thing, I don't know, it just became very repetitive. And then in terms of the content of the actual conversation, it's so funny that the character repeats the line, yes, very intellectually stimulating conversation, and then Lazlo speaks about his passion of architecture. And then you have this reverse shot, which gave like a laugh in the cinema. And I laughed too, because you have this really extended pause of Guy Pearce going like really impressed with Lazlo, kind of passion for his art, and then going like, little moment. And then he says,
I don't think anyone laughed in my theater when I saw
it. In my theater. And then it was like, because there's an extended pause, and you're like, what a poetic response. He says, like, what a poetic remark. And then, like, people were like, because he's so, because he sees so much in previous conversations at the diner. And now, again, after the dinner, he's saying, these conversations of ours are very intellectually stimulating, which is something that I would expect that character to say. And then he says it, which is funny. Like, he's the, ele é o mecenas, né? He's the patron of art. So he's going to say something like, I like you. You are very good. I respect you. And then he actually says the thing. And then he says the thing in various ways, like, what a poetic response. I like you. You're amazing. You're my concubine. It's like, so it propelled that response in the audience. But yeah, because he's so boastful and flamboyant as well. So, he has a charm to him that it's funny with all that. And then he's very literal. What a poetic response. Anyway, but yeah, he's a funny character. Regarding the scenes towards the second half of the movie, what do you think about the whole sharing of heroin with the wife, the way the sex scene is filmed? I find it very interesting in the way that it's shot. It's a culmination of them bringing themselves together, essentially, because for the longest time she's so bounded by the immobility of her disease that she cannot touch her husband. So it's a very important scene at that point. What were your feelings towards that at that point in the film? Because I was a little bit drained, I must say. I both liked the way the mise-en-scène played in it, and that there was this sharing of an addiction that allowed them to have an emotional bonding for the first time and to release themselves of their inhibitions. But at the same time, because of the lack of emotional investment in this thing that he's so much putting emotional investment in, or that the film wants us to believe that he's putting, which is the building, the community center, which is the main drive of the story, I was a little bit drained by then at the same time. But what were your thoughts on it?
I mean, overall, I was like, I mean, I knew that Felicity Jones would be in the film, and she appeared so late in the film. To be honest, I didn't entirely connect with her character. She always seems a bit aloof, a bit distant,
Yeah, I would agree so.
and almost like a bit of a tension in Laszlo's life, not entirely on his side somehow, in little ways. And so that scene, I mean, yes, it's an interesting scene the way he frames it. I mean, I agree. I think it's captivating. But to be honest, all the scenes where they are together, not just that one, they have another one where they're also in bed and they're talking, but it's a bit later. But I mean, all of these scenes where we're seeing a sort of connection between them, it's just not something that to me fully um, happens. And it's always because they seem kind of apart somehow, which I understand because obviously all the years they were apart. But I mean, but not at the same time, not necessarily, because if they come together at last, you would have expected some sort of real bond suddenly and extreme closeness, and it's actually not what happens. So I mean, I think those moments for me are a bit superficial, or end up having sort of a veil of the director trying to create more chemistry that they actually had. And I don't know, I'm a bit on the fence about those scenes, to
Yeah,
be honest.
Yes, I said this to Tomás as well. I think she was more interesting as an
an
absence of the
absence.
thing that he was longing for and couldn't reconnect with. And then when she comes into the film, she's not very interesting in their relationship. I don't know. I think probably the intention by the director and the writers is like to create, to be like, this is truthful. It's like, yeah, they're when they're longing for each other, there's a deep passion there through the letters and all that. But then when they come together, it's when the tensions arise, and it's when they're arguing, and their love maybe is weaker than they thought it was. But like from a narrative point of view, however honest that may be, like in real life, that may happen. But in a movie, when you create an absence like that, and you're like, oh, I just want them to reconnect, and then when they reconnect, you feel like, ah, I wish they were apart again. They were more interesting when they were just.
That's interesting because it tells me, and I feel that way, that it's not that she should have remained an absence throughout the rest of the film. It's just that how you use it when she's there. They haven't made her sufficiently, a strong character, interesting to watch, as in her relationship with him, for us to care. It is interesting, and I agree with what you say that the aspect of truthfulness, that's an interesting idea. But I also understand the film to be this aspect of someone who has gone to a place from Hungary to the USA and was not as integrated as his cousin Attila, and tries to find his way into understanding the paradigm and structure of how this people culture behaves and how he fits in there. He has been several months, maybe years already, there. He finds his way in there. When you have someone from your family coming into it late in the game, there are natural tensions that arise from that, which I find interesting, which is like, I know this, you don't know. You've only came, it's interesting to see the anger and tensions that arise within a family, because sometimes we get mad at the people that are closer to us. We get more easily mad and create arguments with those people. We unveil our meaner sides to them much more easily than with friends or acquaintances, on and on. So with her being his wife, he I think there's an inherent interesting tension on the idea of, I've been here longer than you. I know how these people work. While she is much more hopeful, whenever we see her interacting with the Van Buren, she's always laughing, ha ha ha, ha, so good, etc. She's enjoying she's always making excuses like, oh, they're so nice, they're giving me this job, etc. So that naturally creates these tensions. But that's stage one of the process. I don't see the tension of their relationship going for stage 2, 3, 4. I think it gets stale a bit. She always stays on the position of being critical of him, to the idea. It's almost like the character is blind. I remember a moment where they are in the car and he's insisting on, they do not want us here. And she's like, when does that car ride happens? I think they are leaving the estate. I don't know when that happens, and she's saying like she's in disbelief at him. I don't know, I remember. But it's one of those moments where I feel like, Felicity, wake up! Like these people are not that good, Like it was one of the things that I felt there, that maybe the character is too naive. Maybe that's how they want to build her. But I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I just don't think that for me the main issue was just them two and seeing the love. I mean, for example, I mean when she arrives, I mean, okay, yeah, he's surprised that she's in a wheelchair, that she's sick, but didn't you guys feel that it was very sort of a weak reaction to her arrival? I mean, after years and years of absence,
He
just
reacted
feels.
with worry, right? He kneeled down to her. He was crying.
Yeah, but they were just almost like a chat. Like, okay, he was just kneeling by her, having a conversation.
He could have hugged her or something. I think
It
he
felt
just
very
kneeled
dry.
and
I
it
don't
was a
know.
bit
It did
distant.
feel
Yeah, it
dry,
felt a bit
yeah.
dry.
No,
Yeah, it did feel
and then
dry.
from that, like I feel I don't
It
remember
was almost
correctly,
like
but
she was a patient out of a hospital, and he was like, "Oh, how are you? Are you
how are
okay?"
you? Okay, are you
It was
okay?
a bit
Yeah,
like
I
that.
mean,
And then how long does it take for them to start like having tensions? Isn't it like I mean, even that first interaction, there's already the tension of her not having told them that she's in a wheelchair. But then, like, I felt like the subsequent scenes, it was very quick to get to them, like, arguing and being
Yes,
unhappy or
I mean,
being,
the very first private moment we have with them is in bed. They are about to sleep, and they're like, "Aren't you going to touch me?" "No, we're not going to talk about this any longer."
yeah, it's
And he's
like,
like mad already.
what the
Like,
hell? She just got here, like, structure. The film is strange because it's very long, but sometimes it feels very impatient. It feels like we're just out of
exactly. Yeah,
nowhere, like already so far ahead than we should be. Like, let's develop, let them live the
that's
dream of
exactly what I
having
felt. Yeah.
reunited a little bit, and then the tension start developing. But it feels like they're already, I don't want to fuck you, woman. It's like, what the hell?
yeah.
My pacing issues, what I meant in the beginning, it's exactly that. It's reflected also, for example, when Attila kind of suddenly just throws him out, where you really only saw the tension with the wife, but even that was kind of forced by Attila himself because he kept insisting for
Yeah,
him to dance with his wife, and then suddenly, just like one or two scenes after, he
And
comes
he's
to
your
his bed.
family, for God's sakes, And he's
Yeah,
your
it just,
family.
I mean, and he wasn't even responsible for the whole thing that happened with the chandelier that then meant that he wasn't getting paid. So it just felt like a disproportionate reaction to someone that is in your family.
Yeah, it just informed me. That scene just made me, informed me, as per the intentions of the filmmakers, that Attila cares more about money and his image as this salesman and furniture guy than his own family. And then as a family man, he rather buys the word of his wife and, the fact that the work goes so badly in the end because he doesn't get the money. He blames it all on his cousin, and he rather stays with that, reality of things and push him out than to just think, wait a minute, he's my family. In the beginning, I welcomed him in open arms. I showed him around. I was so kind of, it was such a heartfelt hug. I'll dare say even more heartfelt of a welcoming than, his wife had.
Much more.
That is such a dissonance when he pushes his, cousin away, Lazlo. It's like, is this the same guy from the beginning that I fell in love with? I don't know. I kind of, I liked Attila at the start. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it felt very rushed. Like Attila, for example, being that way, I wouldn't mind it. I just think that
yeah, yeah.
there hadn't been enough scenes up until that point to justify that,
Exactly.
rash of a
Yeah,
decision.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And what about Van Buren's death? Or whatever that is, because he disappears.
death.
I assume he dies, or he kills himself. I don't know. That's my subjective. You can say whatever you like because
I don't
it's open to
remember
interpretation.
what is
I
the
don't know what
scene?
happens. The
Can you
thing is,
describe it?
After the dinner, he sort of disappears into the house.
but the thing is,
And they're
it's
looking
such
for
a.
him.
It's built up with a lot of actions. Like Erzsebét comes into the fold. She calls him rapist, 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 my husband, rapist, which is a very heavy scene.
I'm
And I
just
was
glad I
surprised by
didn't
it.
I didn't hear a gunshot going off. It just that would have
But
been.
then the camera kind of she gets thrown into the ground by Harry, like get out of here. And I was like, Jesus Christ! And then she's dragged out, and I thought that was a bit over dramatic. and then the camera goes away. Oh, where is my father? My father! And then he goes up to the first floor. Van Buren goes away. Then Erzsebét is being accompanied out of the estate, or there she goes, which is very strange because we see her on the background, kind of leaving the estate, and then we just follow the Harry, the son, and they search him through the estate, and he's absent. And we end the whole search on the light of the cross on the only piece of marble in the whole building, which is the altar at the church or chapel. And then we move up to the ceiling from where that light comes in, and he's gone.
But then we learned the building was finished eventually, which, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if his son or his daughter would have finished it. Perhaps his daughter, but I'm not sure what that means to him having died or not.
Yeah, I
be honest,
assume
I
he
don't know.
killed himself. I don't know, out of shame. I don't know. But I felt that way. That's what I felt at the time.
Yeah,
It was
I just
going-
don't know what is the purpose of the scene if not to create that doubt. I feel like that's the purpose, is to make it seem, ooh, did he kill himself? Did he not? But I don't know. I don't know if it brings anything that interesting.
That's all for today, folks. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and website pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you're on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye.
Adios.